Hey everyone, don't forget to follow me on these social media platforms to stay up to date with video content along with interacting with me directly on all your favorite topics and discussions via Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Thank you, and let's begin. The Universe 6 Saiyan homeworld has now been foreshadowed several times within Dragon Ball Super, as Cabba referenced having Vegeta one day visit his planet and meeting the king, who is very much just like Vegeta. But are we eventually going to have Vegeta arrive and visit the Saiyan planet of Universe 6? And if so, what exactly could we expect to see when having Vegeta encounter another culture of Saiyans that are ultimately bred differently than his own? On today's video, myself and Bubbles dive in depth with a potential visitation of Vegeta traveling to Universe 6 and what the outcome may be if he manages to travel to a planet that he had never been to. And again, if you guys love Dragon Ball and are new to this channel, don't forget to go ahead and smash that subscribe button alongside enabling all notifications. That way you guys can be notified whenever a brand new video is posted onto this channel in connection to news, information, updates, and discussions. Hashtag Dragon Ball Squad. Now Bubbles, welcome back onto the channel, as the subject of Planet Sadala and Vegeta having to visit Universe 6 is going to be the main focus point here today, as it was actually foreshadowed on two different occasions, the first being during the Champa tournament and now in the Tournament of Power, of Vegeta essentially wanting to visit Universe 6's home planet of the Saiyans. And I wanted to ask you, in your opinion, do you think Vegeta visiting Planet Sadala without any self-satisfying motive would be deemed logical in him simply wanting to visit and check the planet out? Or do you believe that if he goes out and visits this planet, would he have some sort of end goal in simply wanting to challenge the King of Saiyans on Planet Sadala and simply having to test his might in seeing how powerful the ruler of the Universe 6 Saiyans is? And the idea that Vegeta could simply be visiting Planet Sadala to observe the daily functions of the Saiyans and seeing if they are just as his people once were on planet Vegeta, or would Vegeta have any sort of motive in helping them, just as he did with Cabba, in teaching them about the ways of their pride and potentially having to learn from him, being that he would be by far the most powerful Saiyan who would be walking among them? So my question to you is, do you believe that Vegeta would ultimately have any sort of end goal in being there, or would he simply be there just for observation purposes?
I think that Vegeta will go for observation purposes. I think that he knows he is going to be among one of the strongest, if not the strongest, of all of the Saiyans that's going to be in Universe 6, so that he's not really necessarily going to be going to look for a stronger Saiyan, but more of the sense to get to see what the people there are like. He already got to see Cabba, Kale, and Caulifla and get to see how they weren't as prideful as the Universe 7 Saiyans, and how they didn't really know much about their own power scaling until Universe 7 introduced it to them. I think he's really going in more for like an education purpose and getting to see just how differently the Universe 6 Saiyans run things compared to the Universe 7 Saiyans do, because who would know firsthand of how differently things get run than the prince himself, you know?
I would have to agree, because I don't see why Vegeta would go there just to simply pick a fight, although I think that basing an entire arc off of the Universe 6 Saiyans, I think wouldn't fit, because you have to ask yourself as to what would be the overall direction in having an entire arc be centered around the Universe 6 Saiyans, because we understand that they're not like the Universe 7 Saiyans and being barbarians and you know, planet destroyers. They actually they have a useful purpose in having to do good and having to battle against the likes of evil. So my question to you is, how similar do you think the King of Saiyans is in comparison to Vegeta? Because Cabba referenced in saying back during the Champa arc and during the Tournament of Power how the King himself is just like Vegeta and having to be very prideful. And what's unique about the Universe 6 Saiyans is looking at Kale and Caulifla and Cabba and seeing how quickly they adapt. Do you think that there is a possible chance that Vegeta is going to potentially encounter more Saiyans like Kale, Caulifla, and Cabba, and the idea that perhaps maybe he finds himself in a situation to where he teaches the other Saiyans, and just the concept of Vegeta even being in Universe 6, what's your take on him and his interaction with the people of Planet Sadala?
I think that Vegeta, as the Prince of the Universe 7 Saiyans, currently the only Saiyan living to know what Universe 7's Planet Vegeta looked like and how it was run, I think it would be the most interest for him to go and see how the other Saiyans are doing things. And I think when Kaba said to Vegeta that the planet Sadala King is much like Vegeta, I think it's mainly because the Vegeta we know now is much more calm and collective compared to the Vegeta we were first introduced to.
Right.
And I think that that's where Kaba can draw these similarities. So I think it'll be interesting to get to see the Vegeta we all know now in Super currently, to get to go back and see a peaceful race of Saiyans instead of going over and seeing Saiyans that want nothing but destruction.
Now, what's interesting about Vegeta visiting planet Sadal is I can see Vegeta more or less developing a relationship with Kappa, because as much as Vegeta wants to deny that he is somewhat of a mentor figure to Kappa, it's safe to assume that we could possibly see Vegeta take up Kaba as his pupil and training him to develop his powers more, because let's face facts here. We saw Kaba and the way he was treated in the Tournament of Power. He finally unleashed Super Saiyan 2, but to no avail. He got wrung out by Frieza. So my question to you is, do you see more or less a relationship being built with Kaba and Vegeta, and the idea that he goes there simply to assist Kaba in getting stronger? Because he even told Kaba during the Champa arc, you know, hopefully if everything goes according to plan, maybe I want you to be more powerful than me. And he even told Kaba, remember this pain. And during the Tournament of Power, he was very upset that Kaba was, you know, a weaker fighter than how he was supposed to be based on, you know, Vegeta's teachings the first time when they first encountered each other during the Champa tournament. So my question to you is, what kind of a relationship do you see being formulated between Kaba and Vegeta? And also in terms of an opposition, do you see the planet itself being threatened by a more powerful entity that forces Vegeta for the first time to team with a race of Saiyans that he has no involvement in trying to take this opposition down? Or do you see more of a conflict occurring within the Saiyan planet itself involving Vegeta and possibly some other rogue Saiyan that may be introduced, similar to, I guess, like Broly, because he was one of many other rogue Saiyans that did their own thing aside from Turles and Raditz, but I can only think of, you know, several other oppositions, because if there were to be a Universe 6 story arc, this can go in many different directions. But in terms of there being like an opposition, do you see it being an outside enemy towards Vegeta, having to threaten not only Vegeta but the planet itself? Or do you see a Saiyan within the people themselves, like perhaps maybe someone who's just as boastful or if not prideful than Vegeta, having to step in and challenging him? How do you see the direction of that, and what kind of relationship do you think Vegeta is going to establish with Kaba once he goes off and he visits planet Sadala?
Well, yeah, for starters, I think that we already know Vegeta and Kaba have a master and apprentice type relationship.
Yeah.
Because we saw it in the Universe 6 and 7 arc when he literally had nothing to do with any of the Universe 6 Saiyans, but took it upon himself to train Kaba to get stronger during their match. And then we saw it again in the previous episodes with Super, in the Tournament of Power, getting to see Vegeta saying like how Kaba should be stronger and how Kaba should be working to beat everyone instead of getting defeated.
Right.
And so I think that for sure Vegeta feels, I don't know if it would necessarily be a pride for his race and getting to see that the Universe 6 Saiyans are similar to the Universe 7 Saiyans, and he gets the princely feeling of, you know, wanting to look over your people and wanting to be there to be the one to teach and look after your people. So I think that's where the motives are gonna come from, because he knows that just from seeing from the 3 Saiyans we were introduced to so far, how weak they were in the beginning, how they didn't have the same pride. Now he knows that there's an entire race of people like how those 3 were when he first met them. So the prince and the leadership in him wants to come out and wants to say, I need to train these people to become stronger. I need to make them realize what it is to be a Saiyan. And I think that in that, you can either have it go one of 2 ways, which is somebody decides to challenge him and doesn't believe his strengths are what they are. So Universe 6 Saiyan steps up and says, that's it. You can't just come here and act like you own the place. You can't just think you can treat us this way or think you can train us.
A prince from a different universe coming to our planet demanding and trying to figure answers out when he doesn't even belong. Yeah.
So where is this, the thought process of where is this prince coming from, thinking he has something to offer us when his Saiyans weren't successful for a reason? If he was so powerful, why is he not being the prince of his own Saiyans? Why does he have to come here to
where are they type, yeah.
Right. Or there could be an external source, because we know how plot goes, where something just so happens to occur at the time Vegeta goes to see Planet Sadala, and then he'll end up having to train the Saiyans as they go to beat this external source.
I think if anything, for the Saiyans of Planet Sadala to adapt, I think that the examples would be taken by Kaba, Kale, and Caulifla. Now, the reason why I say that is because Vegeta saw firsthand just how powerful the Universe 6 Saiyans could be, in particular, Kale and Caulifla. I think that looking at how Kale has the adaptation of the legendary Super Saiyan form, how he even told Goku, be careful because this could be what a true Super Saiyan form might resemble or look like or even potentially be, and the idea that Kale and her powers having to run so deep, she could possess the key to unlocking potentially what is the true Super Saiyan form that is of Universe 6. Now, in terms of like an opposition, because I can definitely see a situation occur to where an outside source or an outside party comes in wanting to A, destroy Planet Sadal, or B, trying to take over the planet. I can definitely see a situation occur to where Vegeta teams with his own people for the very first time in not only observing how his people would do against, an opposing threat, but also being there to save his people from this threat, because similar to what happened on Universe 7 with Planet Vegeta, he was merely a boy when Frieza destroyed Planet Vegeta and literally everyone who was on that planet. So, having to avoid that kind of like inevitable threat, I could definitely see Vegeta standing up, and helping his people in trying to eradicate the threat. But my question to you is, if there were to be some sort of a story plot device being planted here, what kind of like an opposition do you see, or what kind of character do you see opposing the Saiyans in Universe 6? Would it be some sort of a deity? Would it be Frost? If Universe 6 essentially gets brought back, you would only assume that Frost would also be resurrected, considering that case. But would it be Frost? Would it be one of Frost's family members, similar to Frieza and Cooler? Would it be possibly an outside enemy, another Saiyan? What kind of opposition do you see happening here in terms of plot, and where do you see Vegeta fit once that, threat occurs in trying to rival or at least threaten the people of Planet Sadal?
I think the Frost option, once you put it out there, is actually a really good idea, because we know Frieza had the specific hatred towards Saiyans because he saw the power they were gaining after every mission and saw how even the lowest of classed warriors were able to take on some of the hardest missions. So Frieza saw firsthand and was the one to eliminate the Saiyans because he knew they were such a threat. So I think if Frost gets brought back, he now could possibly have that same hatred towards Saiyans because he saw not only the Universe 6 Saiyans, not only his own universe of Saiyans, but he got to see the Universe 7 Saiyans, and he got to see what they were capable of and see how conniving but powerful Saiyans could be. So I think if Frost gets brought back, it is possible he could become like a Frieza 2.0 and definitely try to go for defeating the Saiyans.
He would get annihilated so quick. I'm sorry to say, if Kale and Caulifla were there, because the reason why I would say Frost would be out of the equation, but instead having an outside source more powerful than Frost step in is because
he's not on par with Frieza.
Definitely not on par with Frieza in terms of mentality. Sure, Frost despises the Saiyans as well, but Frieza had a very different relationship with those Saiyans as Frost did. Frost was merely using them and trying to fight wars, buying and selling planets. Vegeta and the connection that he had with Frieza loathed all of the Saiyans on planet Vegeta to the point of total annihilation, total eradication. I could definitely see a situation occur to where potentially if Frost gets revived, I would love to see Frost fight Cabba, in the idea that Cabba was lied to the entire time. And seeing how much Cabba has progressed and watching Vegeta, you know, and seeing his pupil combat someone who not only resembles Frieza, but also a figure that where Vegeta cannot stand Frieza for the life of him, and there would be no moral purpose in Vegeta having to fight Frost, you know, but instead of doing that, he sends off his pupil to fight the very person that resembles the man that destroyed his own universe, or at least his own planet within his universe. I would deem that situation to be more logical, instead of having Vegeta jump in there, Super Saiyan Blue, destroys Frost. I mean, if anything, I could see Vegeta falling back and watching what the other Saiyans could do when it comes down to this threat being presented. But in terms of the King of the Saiyans, what kind of relationship do you think he would have with Vegeta? Because looking at how prideful Vegeta is and hearing about how prideful the King is, you can only imagine that the both of them would have kind of like a clash in personalities. So would there be like some sort of like jealousy between the King and seeing how powerful Vegeta is and having godlike energy and just everything he's done? Like, what kind of relationship do you see being established with the King and the Prince? And do you see there being a mutual respect? Or is this going to be something like, you know, similar to a battle of pride in seeing what the King has to offer in comparison to what Vegeta has to bring from Universe 7?
Oh man, that's definitely such a 50-50 chance, because we know how prideful the Saiyans are, and we know that Vegeta would never want to take a handout or never want to take help from somebody. And just hearing from Cabba and saying that the Prince of Sadala is so similar to Vegeta, we can only assume that the King of Sadala would be so similar to Vegeta,
right,
that we can only assume he is also the same and doesn't want to take a handout, doesn't want to take any offered help, because he doesn't think he needs it. So it could definitely be that clash of pride of saying that neither one of them is willing to accept a handout, so the King doesn't want to accept Vegeta's help to make the people stronger because he just genuinely may not feel that it's needed. But it could also come from a mutual respect of the King of Sadala understanding, oh, this is what happened to the Universe 7 Saiyans, you don't want this to happen to the Universe 6 Saiyans, or you want to see us get stronger. So there could be that mutual respect, that mutual agreement of saying that you do have a lot to offer, you are several pars ahead of us, you can reach not only the god form, but you can go beyond the form of the gods. And I think that at the end of the day, prideful or not, you can still have respect for somebody that's stronger than you. You could still have, even no matter how much you might be jealous of that person, it's still thinking of, from a king's perspective or from a prince's perspective, it's thinking of what is best for your people. And if it comes down to it, what's best for the Saiyans of Universe 6 in King Sadala's mind may be having them train with Vegeta or having them take pointers at the very least, because that's what's going to make the people stronger. To our knowledge, the King of Sadala can't go Super Saiyan or can't reach God level because they never knew. We thought that they didn't know what Super Saiyan was until they met Goku and Vegeta. So the King of Sadala would have to stand back and say, you know things we don't know. Maybe there are things putting our pride beside that you could offer us.
But also the King could also be similar to a Kale-esque character in the idea that perhaps maybe his transformations, although we don't know if he does have one or not, could be similar in the idea that perhaps maybe the Universe 6 Saiyans could also possess transformation-like abilities to where it supersedes Super Saiyan 1, Super Saiyan 2, perhaps maybe the legendary Super Saiyan form. And can you even imagine if Vegeta had an entire army of Saiyans led by him? That would be so surreal, but also I think more so than anything, because I know how big of a Hit fan you are, since we didn't really have a definitive rematch between Vegeta and Hit in the tournament, how cool would it be, since he's already there, if by some chance Vegeta also had some sort of an encounter with Hit. Not saying that Hit would be put out to where he has a mission involving planet Sadala, but something more or less, you know, where somebody finds out that the Prince of all Saiyans from Universe 7 is here, and thus putting somewhat of a hit on him, and thus summoning Hit, you know, Hit arrives, similar to the whole Goku situation, to where we finally get a rematch on that, because a lot of us, despite what's being said, a lot of us want to find out definitively as to who would win between Vegeta and Hit now, because Vegeta has gotten gradually stronger. Hit has debuted his time cage and several other abilities. He's still very powerful in his own right, so for me, since he would be already there in that universe, in that dimension, I feel as if that would be like the perfect time to see Hit fight Vegeta. Do you think that since he would be there, do you see any situation like that occurring to where perhaps maybe, you know, there's a hit placed on Vegeta since he's there by some of the other Saiyans, or perhaps maybe an outside party? Do you see any involvement with Vegeta and Hit considering that he would be there? Or do you think that potentially that rematch is never going to happen in Dragon Ball Super?
Oh my gosh, all I have to say is I hope so. You've got me like so smiley and giddy from that idea right now, because you just know I'm the biggest Hit fangirl.
Of course,
that,
of course.
The thought of like, maybe even, what if the King of Sadala would call Hit on Vegeta? Because
see,
he knows...
I mean, the only way I could see him doing that is if he, I mean, but then again, it's like the King would be just as prideful as Vegeta, so I don't see him, you know, interfering or just having any sort of outside, you know, assistance or help. But just some sort of opposition to where, whether it be an arc or whether it be filler episodes, I still think since he's there, either before he leaves or just momentary before he goes back to Universe 7, I think it's essential to have both of them, Hit and Vegeta, come across each other in some way, shape, or form, to where Hit could be wondering, I know you, like, what are you doing here? And Vegeta having to say, well, just so you know, I never had the opportunity to pay my respects to you, since you were the ones that embarrassed me during our Universal Tournament. How's about I pay back my debts and we go at it one-on-one or something like that? Because a lot of us want to see that happen, although
yes.
I don't see Hit involved if there were to be a potential Vegeta going off to Universe 6 to visit the Saiyans. I don't see that scenario happening. However, to please the fans and to get a definitive rematch, sort of like how we had with Goku and Hit when he came to Earth, I think that it'll be very interesting to see them encounter each other. But in terms of, once again, going back to the opposition, do you see a situation occurring to where there is another Saiyan out there that, again, poses some sort of a threat, kind of like a Broly-esque type character, but to where he has his own little army? Just imagine Bardock, per se, but a much more sinister, a much more, you know, deceiving type character, to where he separated himself from his own people in trying to create his own little army, and here he comes, or he, you know, he finds out about Vegeta, and he has some sort of like a, you know, altercation with him, or perhaps maybe his own people. What kind of an opposition, or at least looking at it from like an overall fan perspective, what kind of story would you as a fan love to see with Vegeta having to be there, where there's an outside source not only threatening Vegeta, but also threatening the planet itself? As I said before, do you think it should be a deity? Do you think it should be some sort of like a Saiyan group, some sort of like alternative rogue-like group of Saiyans that, you know, rebelled against their own king in wanting to do their own thing? Would it be something involving Frost's family? Would it be something involving possibly the Universe 6 and the Mechians? What kind of story do you think would be best suited for a narrative involving Vegeta and Planet Sadala?
Well, realistically, we saw in the beginning of Super, and even in the movies, that when Beerus was woken up and he found out that the Saiyans had been destroyed, he was kind of overjoyed by it. He was kind of like, finally, the Frieza took down the Saiyans. I was gonna do that myself. Or, I know it differed in the anime and in the movie, but he either said that had Frieza not done it, he would have done it himself, or that Frieza finally carried out the mission he was hired for. It was something like that. So I think that it's already been put out there that the Gods of Destructions have fear of the Saiyans, or at least Beerus, knowing the capability of the Saiyans, had a little bit of inkling of fright coming from the Saiyans, because he knows how overpowered they can get. So to see a deity try to go against the Saiyans might be an interesting factor, because we got to see that foreshadowing almost from Beerus himself when he said that about the Saiyans getting destroyed.
Right.
So I think the deity idea would be a very cool one, but then it almost gives you a bit of a drawback, because you're thinking the deities are so strong, why would they challenge, especially the Universe 6 Saiyans that so far, just from what we've seen of the 3 that we've seen, they're not that strong. So why would a deity, literally a god level person, want to challenge a group of Saiyans or a planet of Saiyans that, quite frankly, aren't on par with them or aren't that strong?
And that would be the best case scenario, in having Vegeta kind of tell the people, I will not allow what happened on my world to happen here, to where it's the utter destruction of your whole planet. Because think about how much that would push Kaba, Caulifla, Kale, even though I don't think Caulifla and Kale would be there essentially, because they never really specified if they were remaining on that planet or not, but just Vegeta having to remind them and saying, listen, either you're gonna fight or you will be destroyed. And I mean, going back to the godlike character, even though, again, it would be interesting to see Vegeta lead an entire army as a Super Saiyan Blue to combat this deity-like character, that could be something to where it's either stretched out in the form of an arc, because that would be a heavily Vegeta-centric type, story, to where it's no longer about Goku and his Ultra Instinct, but instead it's primarily focused on Vegeta, Kaba, and the other remaining Saiyans. Speaking of that, would you see a similar occurrence to where a deity sends off another character to destroy that planet per se? Perhaps maybe, for example, similar to how Beerus ordered Frieza to destroy planet Vegeta. Would you see, in your opinion, Champa in saying the same thing, to where Champa kind of sends someone off just to teach the Saiyans a lesson, or maybe, just destroy the planet entirely, to where Vegeta's like, it's not happening on my case, to where he's actually working with the Saiyans and fighting together in trying to destroy this opposition?
Well, it's going back and thinking, who else from Universe 6 would be strong enough to challenge the Saiyans? Because we know from the Tournament of Power, or at least to what we've been led to believe, the 10 members from each universe are the 10 strongest, or the 10 with the most potential out of the universes. So we know right there that remaining from Universe 6, we only have 9 of the strongest competitors of Universe 6. If there was somebody that's stronger than any of those 10, or I guess now 9 members of Universe 6, I'm sure Vados and Champa would have done an excellent job in tracking them down for the Tournament of Power. Because it almost doesn't make sense, because how could such a strong character be in hiding? That's why I think maybe Hit would come in handy again, to say Hit gets hired to destroy the Saiyans.
Champa to wow, that would be a twist.
That would, because then that would pull up the same situation as Frieza and Beerus. But even with that might be just a bit of a stretch, because Champa seemed so proud of his Saiyans, and I know Champa's a very shifty character. And
very shifty.
Defeat Goku. Oh no, fight alongside Goku. Things like that. Like, he's just very shady in his opinions on things. So it is difficult to say how he would feel on the Saiyans, but it could end up being he does get a feeling like Beerus felt, and says, wow, these Saiyans are getting too powerful. It's such a problem, they gotta go. But it's also knowing that if Universe 6 gets resurrected, and that's 6 and 7, or if any of the other universes remaining, it's the possibility of Zeno doing another Tournament of Power, doing another exhibition match like that, because it's thoroughly entertaining Zeno. So it's the thought of, we need to keep these strong competitors alive and well and healthy and goodly trained, well trained, because if Zeno decides to pull something like this again, what are we gonna do without the Saiyans? They're such key competitors for the tournament.
The thing is, as well, because I know fans are gonna ask, what's your take? And I know, and again, I will say this will not happen, and this is not confirmed in the least. However, imagine the reaction, essentially, of the fandom if, and I know this is a stretch, if somehow we had Bardock involved, and I understand because people are bound to bring it up, they're going to say, well, whatever happened to him? Didn't he get sent to a different timeline? Didn't he get sent to a different dimension? What if he went to Universe 6? Do you see any other Bardock-esque type character having to be introduced to where Bardock's character was... He was a very tragically affected Saiyan by the result of his people dying and him rebelling against Frieza. Do you see a Bardock type character being introduced, or perhaps maybe even Bardock himself being made official in Dragon Ball Super? Even though I highly doubt that, the only reason why I'm bringing that up is because I know people are bound to ask about him. What's your take on him, or at least a character similar to him, you know, having to be involved with Planet Sadala?
I did really like Bardock when I first saw the Bardock, the Father of Goku movie, things like that. Seeing his character design and everything, I think he's a very clean character. And when he had those, I almost want to call them premonition, if that's really what they're called.
Right.
That ability he had, I think that would be so useful at this time if we start seeing more of the involvement with the Saiyans. That just a character with like premonitions like that would just be such an interesting character to get to see drawn into the mix. So maybe not Bardock himself, but a character that has those capabilities would honestly be very, very cool to see, because he was able to see the destruction of Planet Vegeta before it happened.
And he tried to warn his own people, but it never really happened. He never really got to them in time.
Exactly. So something like that might be interesting, because to have the thought there and just needing characters to carry it out, because had people listened to Bardock, or had they had the strength to combat Frieza, the Universe 7 Saiyans would still be living if they either listened to him and were able to evacuate in time, or if they were strong enough or of Super Saiyan level at the time, they would have been able to combat Frieza. So now maybe having the training of Vegeta, or having the knowledge now of Super Saiyan, knowing that it's an achievable form and it's not just a myth or a legend. Now if we have a character like that, things would be more believable almost. Things would be taken more seriously, and I think that the premonitions of sorts, like how we saw Bardock could do, would be an interesting play to get to see on what's going to happen with the Universe 6 Saiyans.
And also think about this. Imagine, I mean, because we have an entire planet filled with potentially good Saiyans, imagine if they actually went through in trying to create the Super Saiyan God ritual and giving that to a S character. Like, do you think that would be a possibility?
That would have to be if the Super Saiyan God tradition would carry over the same, because honestly, even though we have been introduced to Saiyans since literally the beginning of Dragon Ball, because Goku being a Saiyan himself, I mean, there's already so many subtle differences between the Universe 6 and 7 Saiyans, and we only really know of 2 pure Saiyans from Universe 7, and that's obviously Vegeta and Goku. So, no matter how much we want to say we know a lot about Saiyans because we know a lot of Goku and Vegeta, we don't, because those are the only 2 actual Saiyan characters we can go for as relevance and evidence to the things that we think we know about Saiyans. So things could be completely different throughout the rest of the people and the rest of the race. So if there is a Super Saiyan God transformation, maybe there's more of a criteria that has to make a Super Saiyan God, instead of it just being the 5 joining Saiyans or something like that. It might be a little bit of a different stretch for Universe 6, just because we don't know much about Saiyans in general, and now this is an entire different species of Saiyan, so that could be a little bit of a disconnect.
I like the idea of Vegeta going there. I don't think that they would stretch this out into an arc. I think that it would possibly be filler, if anything, because I could see an arc occurring to where it's obviously involving Goku and the rest of the gang. Goku has to be involved. I mean, it's Dragon Ball, right? It's the Goku show, but I definitely want to see it.
I'm sure Goku would as well. That's the thing.
Imagine he went with Vegeta. It's like, Vegeta.
I don't think he would let Vegeta do it on his own.
I know. I definitely want to see
follow.
Goku do it on. I want to see Vegeta do it on his own as well. I think Goku needs to recover and just stay home after this tournament because I really doubt that he's going to have any sort of like functionality after he fights Jiren again to even continue to do what he does. But seeing and thinking about this, it just raises lots of questions, and we're all going to speculate as fans. But post your comments down below, guys. What are your overall thoughts on Vegeta visiting Universe 6 and Planet Sadala? What kind of scenario would you guys pitch, and what kind of a storyline do you think would work involving Vegeta and the Saiyans? Again, guys, thank you all so much for watching. If you guys are new to the channel, don't forget to punch that subscribe button, guys. Also, click that bell icon and also turn on notifications. That way you guys can be notified whenever a brand new video is posted onto this channel. And again, I will also leave a link down below in the description box for Bubbles' Twitter and YouTube channel, guys. Make sure to go ahead and follow her. Bubbles, thank you so much for joining me. Thank you all so much for watching, and we'll be seeing you all down in the comment section below. Have a great day, everybody. Peace.